Hello and welcome to Hoffmann-Photography. My name is Rainer, I'm a photographer and photo instructor. The topic of today's video is the camera's white balance function and why I don't worry about white balance. Not much anyway. First, why is white balance even necessary? Well, the simple reason is that light is not just white, or more precisely colorless. In fact, it can vary between yellowish and bluish. Yellowish light would result in a yellow color cast, and bluish light, of course, would result in a bluish color cast. So that's the basic problem. Now let's have a look at the different light sources and their color. This illustration shows the so-called color temperature, measured in Kelvin, of typical light sources we have to deal with in photography, ranging from reddish to bluish. If you're wondering why there are no natural green or purple light sources, Google blackbody radiation, a topic that is way beyond the scope of this video. Candlelight with a color temperature of about 1500 Kelvin is quite reddish. Then we have tungsten light with about 3200 Kelvin, which is yellow. Fluorescent light is listed here at 3800 Kelvin, but that's a bit arbitrary because fluorescent lamps don't emit a continuous spectrum and therefore don't really fit into this scheme. But again, that is beyond the scope of this video. Daylight at about 5500 Kelvin is more or less colorless. On a sunny day, this light is present roughly between 10 AM and 4 PM. Shortly after sunrise and before sunset, sunlight is more yellowish. On an overcast day, the water vapor in the air filters out the long wavelength radiation, that is, the red and yellow part of the spectrum, and what remains is bluish light, here listed at about 6500 Kelvin. If you are in the shade of a large building on a sunny day, then blue light from the sky illuminates the shadow areas, and the color temperature would be something like 7500 Kelvin. With the exception of the candle, you have probably seen these icons in the white balance menu of your camera. The icons are in a different sequence, but that is no big deal, I hope. The default setting is automatic white balance, or AWB. In this mode, the camera analyzes the colors in the image and tries to come up with neutral colors, that is, an image without a color cast. More on automatic white balance later. But you can of course manually set the white balance depending on the light source, like in this case tungsten. Or you can even dial in a specific color temperature value like 5200 Kelvin as in this example. So much for the theory of white balance, but how does it work in practice? Well, let me first say that I always use automatic white balance for three reasons. First, in my personal experience, automatic white balance works extremely well. In most cases, anyway. Let's have a look at a few examples. This subject consists mainly of bold primary colors. Whenever there are many different colors, we expect the automatic white balance to work properly. And indeed, in this case, the white balance is perfect, at least in my opinion. In this shot of the European Court of Human Rights building in Strasbourg, the colors are more subdued than in the previous image and the building itself is more or less gray. Again, we expect the white balance to work fine. And again, it did. But whenever there is a dominant color, like this yellow dress, we would expect the auto white balance to fail. Since everything at the yellow, the auto white balance should interpret this as a yellow color cast due to, for example, a tungsten light source. And it should try to remove this supposed color cast. But it didn't. This image was actually taken with auto white balance. I was quite impressed. I hadn't expected that. Having said that, there are cases where auto white balance can be off. look at the bluish trunks of these birch trees. I kind of like this effect, but it's of course not the correct color. The image was taken on an overcast day, and manually setting the white balance to cloudy removed the blue color cast. However, in my experience, these cases are rare, and in our archive, about 80% of the images didn't require changing the white balance in post, and the remaining 20% required just a fairly small correction. Here's a second reason why I don't manually set the white balance. Maybe it's old age, but I keep forgetting to reset the white balance when the lighting conditions change. And that can ruin an image. Let's say you've had an indoor shoot with tungsten light and you've set the white balance accordingly. Now, if your next shoot is outdoors and you forget to reset the white balance to sunlight, then you will get something like this. Such an extreme color cast is hard to remove in post. You can try it, but the resulting colors will always look somewhat off. But that is true only for JPEG files, and therefore here's my third reason why I use auto white balance. I only shoot RAW files. RAW files allow me to change the white balance in post-processing in any way I like. During the shoot, I don't bother with white balance and can concentrate on the important parameters, basically aperture and shutter speed. When shooting RAWs, I don't worry about white balance. I know not everybody will agree with me, but for me it works fine, so I stick with it. Now keep in mind, we are talking about photos. For video clips, it's a completely different story when it comes to white balance, but that's a topic for another episode. I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.